Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. 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 So Kalpesh asked me to speak on my association with Srila Prabhupada. So my first association with Prabhupada was through his books. In 1972, I received a small pamphlet, Transcendental Teachings of Prabhupada Maharaj. And I had gotten it because my girlfriend and her sister took me to this college where this group of followers of Guru Maharaji, he was the big story back then. Everybody was following this 16-year-old boy who was supposedly Krishna himself. And so they took me to a gathering of their group. And I did not like that. The way they were talking, I said, these people are all crazy. I didn't like anything they were saying. But on the way there, as I was going to the college, I met one angel, small little Jewish girl. She had the markings on her face. And she gave me that pamphlet, Transcendental Teachings of Prahlad. And on the way out, I saw her again, and she gave me some of her own lunch. She said, here, take this, some rice. So I ate Maha Prashad. And I went home and read that pamphlet, and I liked everything I read. I didn't like anything in that meeting of the devotees of Guru Maharaji, but I liked what Prabhupada was saying in his pamphlet. And on the back cover, there was a picture of Prabhupada like this. And I said, yeah, that's my guru. 6 months later, I saw that same devotee, Daivi Shakti Devi Dasi. And she gave me this big book, Krishna. And so I took that book, and I was on my way to Columbus, Ohio, to make it as a rock and roll star. I had met her at the Port Authority bus station. And on the bus, I tried to read the book, but there was all these big words, Shiro Dakashayi Vishnu, and it was giving me a headache. I closed the book. So I was in Columbus, Ohio for some time, a few weeks. But I was becoming more and more frustrated, unhappy, miserable. And one night I played in the bar, and I got home at midnight, and I was totally frustrated. I said, where is that book? So I took that book. I sat down in my room midnight. I said, I'm going to read this book. Chapter 1. It was Krishna book. Then I finally got to chapter 6. By this time, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I was a slow reader. And when I finished the story of Putana, I closed the book and I said, I am going to join Prabhupada's movement. So I realized how powerful Prabhupada's books are. So that was in February. It took me 2 weeks to wind up my things. And so I went back to my parents' home in Long Island. And by this time, I had hair down to here and a big beard. I looked like George Harrison on the cover of his album, All Things Must Pass. Big beard, long hair down to here. I was a hippie. But when I got home, I asked my mother, where are Daddy's shavers? Because when we were little boys, every summer, my father would give us a buzz cut. So I said, give me those clippers. And I shaved I didn't know about the shika. So I just shaved everything off. Everything. My mother went. Then right after that, my brother's rock and roll band was playing at the local college. So I had nothing to do, so I went. But again, I was miserable. I was so miserable that while my brother's rock and roll band was playing, I lied down on the stage in front of the guitar amplifier, just dying out. And then all of a sudden I turned my head and there was a girl going like this. I was thinking, what's this? And so I went to the girl. She said, are you a devotee? Devotee? No, but I want to be a devotee. And she goes, oh, I've been a devotee for a couple of years. I said, oh, tell me all about it. She said, well, I got to go to class, but when I finish my class, I'll come back and talk. So she would come back from class and I would ask her questions about Krishna and the temple. Then she would go to class. This went on all day. Finally, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She said, well, now I have to go home. I said, no, take me to the temple. She goes, okay, I'll take you to the temple. So we got in her car. She drove to her home. She cut up some fruit for me. I never had cut up fruit. This is interesting. She said, I'll be back in a few minutes. I have to get ready. So I'm eating the fruit. And when she comes out, she has tilak on, beautiful sari. She looks like an angel. She goes, come on, we're going to go to the temple. So in the car, she gave me beads. She taught me how to chant. And she was driving in one hand, and she had her beads in the other. And she said, I have a few rounds I have to chant. So I was okay. I was sitting in the front seat trying to chant. And we got to the temple. She goes, oh, there is Jadurani. And we parked the car. And when we got to the temple door, she saw something. She goes, Prabhupada's here. Prabhupada's here. And I'm going, really? She went mad. Then we opened the door to the temple. And it was like a mystical place. I saw these 2 devotees chanting japa like Marines. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I was like, wow. Then they took me into the temple. And in New York, the temple deities are Radha Govinda. Govinda is black. And I went, wow, that's far out. Then they took me downstairs. Brooklyn Temple had, I think, 3 or 4 floors. So the Prashad Hall was in the basement where the kitchen was. So they took me to the basement. They said, sit down. And then they gave me a piece of wax paper. And on that was maybe this size. And on it was some green slop. I don't know what it was. And I was hungry. They said, eat this. So I licked it up and I jumped up. This is great. Give me more. Give me more. And they said, you got to come back tomorrow. I said, I'm definitely coming back tomorrow because this prasadam is so fantastic. Then we went upstairs to the second floor. First floor was the temple. Then the next floor, they were putting on a drama. And I sat right up front. And in the back, like in the middle, Prabhupada was sitting on a rocking chair. And there was this sannyasi, and he was massaging Prabhupada's hand. I thought, is that guy gay or what? It looked weird. He kept looking at Prabhupada, and he was rubbing. I said, this is weird. They did the play, and everybody filed out. And when you came out of the room, there was a hallway like this size. So I was in the back. Then finally, Prabhupada came out, and everybody paid obeisances. And when Prabhupada came through the doors, it was like lights. The aurora borealis was coming from Prabhupada, and it was like telling me, go down, bow down. So I went down like the other devotees. I was thinking, this is great. Now I know what it was like when Jesus was here. I have found the modern Jesus. I was so happy. So then I saw that girl who brought me, and she goes, I've decided to move back into the temple. Seems she had been a devotee. She had left, was going to college, but by seeing Prabhupada, she decided, I'm moving back. And I said, well, I want to come back too. So she took me to my home. She drove a good 40 miles. I got my stuff from my home because the next day I had to play guitar. And so we came back, and when we got to her house, her parents, they became very upset. They didn't want her to move back into the temple. They were very upset, so they took the car away. But she was fearless. She goes, that's okay. So we went, there was a train station. She goes, we'll go by train. So by this time, it's like midnight. And I was thinking, uh-oh, we're going to go to Brooklyn at midnight? I don't know. So anyway, I went along with her. We got to the train station in Brooklyn, and she goes, okay, the temple doesn't open for another couple of hours, so we're going to have to find someplace. I went, find someplace? This is Brooklyn. She goes, don't worry. So she sticks her thumb out, and I'm thinking, oh no, I read about this. Hitchhiking in Brooklyn in the dead of night, we're going to get killed. But she was so fearless, dressed in her sari. And after maybe 20 minutes, a car stopped. We got in, and they drove. And I was thinking, oh no, we're going to get raped, we're going to get murdered. This is Brooklyn. Then all of a sudden, she tells the driver, stop here, stop here. And I go, what? And we get out of the car, and she says, I'm going to go inside this bar. Don't worry. And here I am in the middle of Brooklyn, on the street. She's in this bar. After a few minutes, she comes out, and she has the keys to someone's apartment. Don't ask me how this happened. She goes, we have a place to stay because we still have a few hours. So we go to this guy's apartment. And she says, you lie down and take rest. I have to finish my rounds. So by this time, I was like, whatever. I'm just happy to still be alive. So I'm trying to take rest on the couch. She's chanting. All of a sudden, she goes, Prabhu, time to get up. I was going, oh, no. Again, she sticks out her thumb. After 5-10 minutes, a car comes and takes us right to the temple. I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. So I went to my first Mangal Artik, and it was fantastic. Such a fired up kirtan. Temple room was packed with devotees. There was like no room. It was like women on one side, men on the other. Then After Mangalarti and Tulsi, then we chanted japa. And the temple room was full of devotees chanting japa. And I was chanting japa. Then, of course, greeting of the deities. And Prabhupada came and he gave class. And it was hard to hear Prabhupada because his accent was very thick. But I was trying to hear. And I think I remember one thing he said. Eko bahunam vididhati kaman. Prabhupada says there's one singular eternal individual, and there are many eternal individuals. But the difference is the one singular eternal identity is maintaining all the many. So that somehow or other stuck, and I still remember that. Eko bahunam yo vididhati kaman. Prabhupada gave class, and the whole temple room emptied. And I didn't know. And I'm still chanting japa in the temple room. Seems that all the devotees went with Prabhupada to the airport, because Prabhupada was going that morning from New York to Los Angeles. But I didn't know, because I was thinking about Prashadam. Okay, so so that was 1973. That event took place end of March, early April 73. By July, I moved in. July 15th, 1973, I moved into the temple. I wrote on my parents' refrigerator, joining the temple. And I was thinking, I'll try it for 2 weeks. Let's see what happens. But 2 weeks turned into 2 months, turned into 2 years, and now it's been how many years? Over 40 years. Because I liked it. I liked being in the temple. It was exciting. So the next time I saw Prabhupada, I think it was 1 year later, around Thanksgiving time. And when Prabhupada gave class, this time I could understand more of what he was saying, because I had gotten purified by chanting and being so. Prabhupada the accent wasn't so difficult for me. Then, in 1975, I decided I wanted to get Brahman initiation. And I didn't think that it would happen if I stayed in New York. And besides, the Brooklyn temple was now going to shift to Manhattan. So I left the New York temple and I went on my own, and I wound up in Detroit. And I joined the Detroit temple, and I told the temple, I want to go to India. So let me do Sankirtan so that I can go to India. And they let me do it. So I would go to the suburbs of Detroit. I would knock on doors, and I would say, and I would go as a devotee with devotee clothes. I would knock on people's doors and I would say, I'm a missionary going to India. Please give me 1 penny for my trip. So some people would give you a penny, but others would give more. After, 6 weeks, I had enough money to buy a ticket. So it was, I think, June. Must have been June, yes. And I went to India, and I arrived in Delhi. And when they opened the doors of the airplane, that hot air came in. It was like, wow, unbelievable. So I didn't know what I was doing. So there I am in Delhi, and I figure out you got to take something, a bus to, or a train, something to Mathura. So I figured that much out. But Mathura is still not Brindavan. So when I got to Mathura, I stopped one rickshaw guy. And I said, take me to Krishna Balaram Mandir. Now, I thought he understood me. But he said, sure. So we're going, and I'm thinking, does it take this long? After about 2 hours, he stops in the middle of nowhere and says, pay me. I go, I said Krishna Balaram Mandir. And he starts yelling. So all of a sudden, all the people come out. And I'm going, oh no, what's going to happen now? Seems like he took me to Gokul, which is not exactly where the temple was. So there were some people there, they understood English, and they settled it out. They said, pay him some money, give him something, and then we'll help you get to Brindavan. So a Tonga came. You know what a Tonga is? And so I got on the Tonga, and that took me to the Krishna Balaram Mandir. And when I got there, do you all know Gopal Krishna Maharaj? So at this time, he was still a householder. And he knew me from Brooklyn Temple, because that's where he spent a lot of time. So he knew me. He goes, oh, Nirantara, I'm glad you came. You're going to get Brahman initiation. I went, that's exactly why I came. It was like Krishna confirmed it. It was the first thing he said. So I'm there in Brindavan temple. I become the temple commander. I'm mopping up the temple and doing all kinds of things. And in August, Prabhupada comes. In April, Prabhupada had opened the Krishna Balaram temple, and then he went traveling. So there were many things that were unfinished. So Prabhupada, I went on my first morning walk. I thought I was special now. I'm going on because I'm temple commander. I'm somebody. Before, I used to be a brahmachari going on Sankirtan. You're just a nothing. You're just a Shudra. But now I'm temple commander. So I got to go on a morning walk. And right from the start, Prabhupada is saying, he's looking at different things, and all the temple leaders are there. The temple had two presidents, a householder and a sannyasi. They were two co-presidents. And Prabhupada was saying, he would point to something. Why isn't this done? And the sannyasi said, Prabhupada, I'll take care of it. And he continues to walk through the temple. Why wasn't that done? Again, the sannyasi says. So this goes on 5 or 6 times. Prabhupada is pointing out different things, and the sannyasi says, I'll take care of it. We get to the beginning of outside the courtyard. Prabhupada says, yes, you'll do everything. And everybody just stops. That is the qualification of the ass. And Brahmanand is Prabhupada's secretary, so he's like, he's just like, yeah. He's enjoying how Prabhupada is blasting all the temple managers. He said the real qualification is to get the asses to do the work. And the walk continues. So that was my first personal experience with Prabhupada. What it means to be a manager. Not that you do everything, but you inspire others to engage. A few days later, I finally get initiation, Brahman initiation. And I was woken very early in the morning by the householder temple president, Dhananjay. He said, you got to do some things to get initiated. So we had to cut some trees. We had to get certain leaves and twigs. And then there was also first initiation. So for the initiation, I was playing mridanga. And there was a kirtan going on. And Prabhupada was giving first initiation. And what had happened was, it seems Prabhupada allowed his secretaries to pick the names. So they would hand Prabhupada the beads, and on the beads would be a name. So Prabhupada would call up such and such, and he'd say, your name is such and such, your name. Finally, he got to this one devotee, and I could hear Brahmananda whispering in Prabhupada's ears, Ashray Das. Prabhupada said, what? No. Your name will be Bhagavat Ashray Das. Prabhupada changed the name right on the spot because that name, Ashray Das, is a Mayavadi name. And I guess somebody was testing Prabhupada. I don't know. But he immediately caught it. No, your name will be Bhagavat Ashray. And everybody went, Jai Haribol. So then they told me, okay, Prabhu, later in the day, you'll be called and you're going to get Brahman initiation from Prabhupada. Now I had some problems. All my dhotis were wet. They were washed, but they were still wet. I couldn't go to Prabhupada with a wet dhoti. So I went to one of my senior godbrothers and he loaned me a dhoti. I said, oh, thanks. So then I go to where Prabhupada's room is in Brahmananda. I don't know if you know, Brahmananda is a big, one of the first devotees, and he's big. And he knew me also, I guess, from New York. He goes, oh, Nirantara, it's you. I said, yes. He goes, so here's your first test. So anyone who's seen a Brahmin thread, it's all tightly wrapped up. He goes, here's your first test. You have to unravel it. And of course, it comes out like spaghetti. And I'm almost at the verge of crying. And Brahmananda said, Nirantara. So he took out a new one and he did it for me. So he said, go, Prabhupada's waiting. So I go in the door, and Prabhupada is sitting down on a mat. And Prabhupada pats the floor, indicating sit next to him. So I got to sit. So here's Prabhupada, and I'm sitting just like right next to him. And he takes out a sheet. No, first he shows me how to count on my fingers. He goes like this. So I was good. I was able to do that. I've heard some devotees, they couldn't do it. But I was able to do it. I was thinking, oh, I'm almost there. So then he had a sheet with the 7 mantras. So word by word, Prabhupada would say Om, I would repeat after him. Now I had been good at Sanskrit, so I was able to pronounce the mantras pretty good. Then it came time to put on the thread. So I'm sitting next to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is putting on the thread, and I thought, oh, I'll assist Prabhupada. So I raised my arm thinking it would help Prabhupada to put on the thread. Prabhupada took his hand like this. Have you not seen the others? And I went. And then all of a sudden, Prabhupada's whole face changed, and he became like a grandfather. He goes, that's all right. So he pulled my arm, put my thread on. I was so humiliated. I paid my obeisances and ran out. I was in complete shock. So that's my first failure with Prabhupada. Because he said, have you not seen the others? So that taught me a lesson. Learn by looking, by observing. Don't just be a dumb dum-dum. Open your eyes and learn. Then I think I saw Prabhupada. At some point there was a Philadelphia Rath Yatra, but I don't know if that was before or after. I remember that. Then 1 year later, 1976, that was a tremendous year for the movement, because that was the year everybody in all the temples was going out on book distribution. They would have one pujari stay back and do all the deity service. Everybody else, Sankirtan. So I was with, at that time, Satsarup Dasa Goswami on his library party, and I was distributing candy canes and collecting Lakshmi, and I even went out in the Santa suit. Yes, but I was the big collector for the party, so I was getting puffed up. So that year, 76, It was time for everyone to go to the annual Mayapur Brindavan festival. 2 weeks in Mayapur, 2 weeks in Brindavan. You go for Gaur Purnim. So there were so many devotees, they filled up an entire 747 airplane. It was all devotees, maybe there were 5 karmis. And the devotees took over the plane. They set up an altar with Gaurni Thai. And the flight was late in the evening, so the devotees got on the intercom. Haribol Prabhus, it's time to take rest. We'll wake you up in the morning and we'll have greeting of the deities. So we went to sleep, and then all of a sudden, Haribol Prabhus, Haribol, it's time to wake up. So what we did was, all the devotees in the plane got up out of their seats, one by one, offered flowers to the deities in the front of the plane, and then returned to their seats. And we had kirtan going on over the loudspeaker. And the karmis on the plane, they were in the back. There's like maybe a few. So that was interesting. So, Prabhupada, we arrived in Mayapur for 2 weeks. Prabhupada was giving class, and Prabhupada gave initiation. He gave a few people sannyas. And then it was time to go to Mayapur to Brindavan. And on the way to Brindavan after Delhi, there was this town called Modi Nagar. It was like an industrial town. And it was owned by this pious family. And Prabhupada was staying with the